what doesn't kill you makes you better. Adversity creates an advantage a lot of the time. But I just, want to be clear, the things that people would describe as adversity, if you looked at it from an external perspective, poverty, no dad, young teenage mum, no siblings, a lot of alone time, moving a lot. Never once did I ever feel at any point in time that they were disadvantages.
Welcome to Insights into Success, where with your host Paul Dodds, we hope to educate, inspire and motivate you to achieve your own personal success. We talk to guests from all around the world from a variety of walks of life to hear the realities of their own journey to success. What challenges have they faced? How have they coped with failure? And what have been the keys or will be the keys to their own success? In our Read to Succeed interviews, we talk books that have inspired our guests, and for some, they share their secrets to marketing success. Join us as we give you insights into success.
All right, well, welcome to Insights into Success, where a special guest today is none other than Jason Paris, who's the CEO of One New Zealand, which used to be, as I recall more so, Vodafone New Zealand. So thank you so much, Jason, for agreeing to be on the show. And I want to just share with everyone that the theme for the show today is how perceived weaknesses and disadvantages can actually fuel your journey to success. So let's just send this conversation where that goes and whether or not we can maybe unearth a few elements of weaknesses or challenges that maybe have actually influenced you, Jason, in your journey and propelled you to the, quite remarkable success of being CEO of one of the largest companies in New Zealand.
Thanks for having me, Paul. And $1 in the Vodafone swear jar right off the bat, which is good. But I made that mistake on the day of One New Zealand rebrand launch. So no one's worse than me. But yeah, it's nice to be here. Thanks very much. And it's always a privilege. I always find these conversations as much of a learning experience for me as anyone else.
No, I think the thing with these conversations, it's just a great way to share information with other people that are listening and hopefully shortcut their journey to their success, whatever that may mean, but also to give people motivation to show people that, you don't have to be that incredibly special in order to succeed. Often we sort of perceive those that succeed as being, remarkable individuals that we couldn't possibly emulate. But in reality, when you often talk to them, they're actually very down-to-earth, humble people. But there is a certain element that gets them across the line, which I like to sort of unearth when talking to people. But their fundamentals are nonetheless very much like the average human being that you meet on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, if you're looking for a superhuman, you need to talk to my wife, not me. But if you want someone with no special skills who's just lucky to be here and is waiting to be found out at any moment, then you're talking to the right guy.
Well, the thing I love about you, Jason, and in terms of my observations of you and anything that I've seen, is that you always remain quite humble, which is, I think, a great quality to have. It's inspirational, I think, when people are very aware of their own shortcomings and don't try and perceive themselves to be anything more than they are, despite the fact they may have actually met with quite a bit of success.
Well, it's not difficult, Paul, because my mates tell me I'm an idiot pretty much every time I talk to them. And I would make a mistake daily that my team would remind me of, or my children or my wife would remind me of, and we're all human. And you're right. Like throughout my entire career, I've been no one different at work than I'm not at home. So I'm the same person for good and bad, 100% of the time.
Yeah, no, good on you for that. Now, I want to take you back to the beginning or early days back in Southland, and I want to get a bit of insight into your upbringing back there.
Yeah, so a privileged upbringing. I think New Zealand is the greatest country on the planet to live and work, and Southland is the greatest province within our great country. So very, passionate and loyal. Regional lifestyle has so many positives to it. The freedom, the flexibility. I loved it. I've talked a lot about the upbringing I had. So 16-year-old mum, solo mum. Dad left. He was a teenage father as well, and he left. My father left straight away, and never played a part in my life again. But I never felt as a kid that I missed out on anything. Even though now I'm a bit older, I realise that we didn't have a lot of money and that we moved house a bit, and it was tough for mum being a teenager on the domestic purposes benefit, or DPB as it was called back then. But the house, or whatever house we were in, was filled with love, and mum always believed in me and kind of instilled in that you make your own opportunities, and if you can be the best version of yourself, the world is your oyster. And not dissimilar to what you talk about, being the best that you can be. So that was installed in me from a very, very, very young age. So it's great.
So that's quite remarkable that your mum, particularly given how young she was, that she was instilling in that in you. Where did that come from, do you think, for her?
It's a good question. I suppose your starting point is, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
And so mum's always been like kind of ambitious herself, because, again, getting pregnant and having me at school meant that it definitely narrowed her pathways for higher education, if that's what she chose to do. And so even when she was on the DPP, I remember she enrolled herself in typing courses at the local kind of high school and I got dragged along in my bassinet while she was doing those types of things. So I think mum's always been, quite ambitious, not afraid of hard work. And that's most people down in Southland as well. It's, about hard work is rewarded. You're humble, you quietly achieve, and you get on with the job, and you make the best of the situation that you're in. So I suppose that's kind of in the DNA of Southland, and definitely in the DNA of my mum, and that kind of rubs off.
So when you were living down there, were you living actually in Invercargill, or were you just outside of Invercargill somewhere?
No, Invercargill, 206 Regent Street originally, and my grandparents. So that's kind of south Invercargill, and then we moved a little bit. I went down to Kew, down Southland Hospital, then back to my grandparents every now and then. So yeah, the Invercargill City is kind of the home base.
And just as an aside, presumably you know of a town called Tuatapere?
I do, know it well.
Well, that's where I lived for a good chunk of my time.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, you can talk to me and talk to all of us about the advantages of Southland as well. You had even
absolutely.
more of a regional rural lifestyle than I did. It's a great spot.
Yeah, I was actually born in Gore, but ended up living in Tuatapere for a good chunk of time. So a simple lifestyle, but a great one with great memories. Getting in the outdoors and doing lots of stuff. Yeah,
most of my upbringing was just filled with sports. So
yeah.
I jokingly say I got a degree at school in cards, 500, and sport. Those are the two things that I loved playing. So again, home, Southland's home. Try and get back at least 3 times a year, and every second Christmas we still head back going.
Yeah, And so when you were at school, what were you thinking that you were going to do when you left? Did you have any sort of great aspirations, do you recall, about what you wanted to do?
No, not really. I always like I tried hard. I was pretty conscientious until I kind of hit my teenage years, and then girls were of interest. And so I liked school. I had a lot of really good teachers. In my very first year, you always have those teachers that stick out for you. And I was in Primer 1 back then. Miss Hardy, she was awesome and made me really enjoy it. And then at the end of my kind of schooling in high school, I applied for Teachers Training College and got turned down, got rejected actually. So
Right.
I can't remember why I wanted to be a teacher. There was no one in my life or circle of friends or parents' friends that were teachers or wanted to do the same thing. But maybe, I had some pretty good teachers right throughout and thought that looked pretty cool. And that's, I think, to your point, it's funny how life works out for whatever reason. And I had good enough grades. I'm not sure why I got declined. It might have been the quality of my application. But I got turned down, and that set me on a different path to, instead of doing extra study after high school, I went straight into work and took a job at Trust Bank Southland.
Yeah. And I'm interested to hear about that, because it seems like, from what I read, that you actually progressed up quite quickly. And I'm just curious to know if you sort of have any sort of insight into why that was. Why did you seem to go up the ladder quite quickly when you're at Southland Building Society?
Yeah, I don't know. You get asked that a little bit. I'm a healthily competitive person. So, and I always I'll give it my 100% in everything that I do.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter if it's playing cards, tiddlywinks, going for a run, or something at work. I always want to be the best. I really like people, so I enjoy, and I've kind of gravitated towards kind of people-centric industries and organisation. I love change, and every industry is full of change. I think it's just industry. It just changes, just accelerated. So. And again, it goes back to probably my childhood, moving around a little bit, being given responsibility early. I probably had more responsibility at 5 because solo mum, and it's just part of the family, and you had your jobs to do, and that's what you got. That's what you had to do.
Yeah.
So probably that kind of competitive nature, always wanting to be encouraged to give it my absolute best. Not let my teammates down, not let my boss down, not let my mum down. So all of those things are probably a driver, but probably not dissimilar to most people, I would imagine.
Yeah, but always to varying degrees, though, isn't it? Like, a lot of people can be competitive, but then you soon find out there's different levels of being competitive. So maybe you're more at the high end of competitiveness, maybe.
But competitive as a team, although I'd say I always gravitate towards team sports, not really individual sports, and competitive as the team to win, not necessarily the competitor for me to win individually, if that makes sense. I've always kind of gravitated towards team sports, except again when I'm with my mates, then it's all on, and the good-natured camaraderie and competitive streak will always come out in all of us. But team first competitiveness has always been something that has been important to me, and I've enjoyed.
Presumably too, because you talked before about liking change, so presumably interlinked in all that is that you like to learn. You got a thirst for learning, because every time, obviously, when there's change, there's always new things to learn. So, do you think that's also an important driver for you, learning new things?
Yeah, 100%. And everyone learns differently, but I learn a lot through reading, listening, and storytelling. So quite a visual person. and and I said before, really like talking to customers and people. So, enjoy that as well. And then, like I genuinely, every path that every role that I've had, I've just felt incredibly privileged. So, my first job at Trust Bank Southland, Murray Heath, he was the manager for Southland Rugby and the manager for Trust Bank Southland, and it was coming back from a representative rugby tour that he sat down beside me on the bus and asked me, "What are you thinking about doing next year?" and gave me the job. And so you also don't want to let people down who have believed in you and have given you the opportunity. I also, in the competitive streak, I try and gamify things that I find boring as well. So I remember one of my first jobs, my junior job, was on checkbooks at Trust Bank Southland, and every week I had a huge volume of checkbooks to shred, and then I'd make a game of it. How fast could I be the fastest checkbook shredder that they'd ever seen, and what were the techniques that I could use to ensure that when I came back up, the effectiveness and efficiency of my checkbook shredding was noticed. So those are things that I don't know, had in my DNA that I don't know, remember being taught, but were just innate, either through avoiding boredom or that kind of competitive nature and not wanting to let people down that have helped me as well.
So you didn't have any siblings, so you were just on your own with your mum?
Yeah, so mum had me again with 16, and then just had some relationships and nothing really stuck for her, unfortunately. And so just didn't work out in that way for her to be in a relationship for a period of time where that was probably considered a consideration for them, until her most recent relationship, which is with Grandad Barry, the children's grandfather, and they've been together for the last 20 years. But they met, I think, when mum was in her early 40s, and so she met her love of her life later, at a later stage, and kids were probably off the table at that point in time.
So really, it means though that you had to grow up young, had to be independent quite young. You didn't have brothers or sisters to kind of bounce off for competition. So that was obviously a real, just innate within you to be competitive like that. It's interesting, because it's hard to, like, if you imagine that your life was different and you're born into a family with a mum and a dad at maybe an older age, just how different could it have been for you?
Yeah, I don't know. You kind of like to think that you'd be the same person, right? But clearly there are some things that shape you. But I would say I'm going to say a similar thing to most people that you've had a conversation with, Paul. What doesn't kill you makes you better. Adversity creates an advantage a lot of the time. But I just, want to be clear, the things that people would describe as adversity, if you looked at it from an external perspective, poverty, no dad, young teenage mum, no siblings, a lot of alone time, moving a lot. Never once did I ever feel at any point in time that they were disadvantages. Just was not even in my mindset or the environment that I had any impediments at all to doing whatever I set my mind to. So again, that comes down to, I think, my mum from an early age and making sure that I never felt disadvantaged in any way.
And that, to me, is just so critical. I think your mother has done an amazing job. The fact that, she could very easily have felt sorry for herself and felt hard done by and translated that through to you. But instead, she's tried to instill in you a very positive mindset from the outset. And as is seen time and time again, it's how we interpret events in our lives that will determine the outcome. If we want to see something as bad and just draw the negative out of it, then we will get negative. But if you want to see the positive in the situation, you can get positivity from it. But definitely your mother deserves a lot of credit from what you're telling me on putting you on the right path right from the get-go.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have had a lot of strong women in my life. My mum was one. My mother's mother, so my grandmother was another. My wife, clearly. My daughter. A lot of strong kind of female role models. But then I have my uncle, my mum's brother, and my grandfather, and my mum's father, etc. So teachers and coaches. So I did feel like I had a lot of role models and support because of the school environment, because of my sports environment, because of mum, because of her family. So yeah, there were a lot of things that I didn't have in hindsight that you could have said were disadvantages, but they never showed up in that way to me. And as you've said, Paul, you have a choice in every situation that it comes at you. It's your choice in terms of how you decide to approach it and your mindset within that moment. And I am 100% relentlessly half glass full in every situation to an annoying degree. Like my wife will tell you how annoying it is that whenever there's a problem or something that she just wants to talk to me about, I'll go into solution mode and go, but look at the opportunity here that we've got, when all she wants me to do is to sympathize and acknowledge the issue. So it can be, sometimes it's not a great attribute, but that's how I decide to look at life in general. I'll choose to be 100% positive in every possible situation as much as I can be.
Yeah. And look, that can be super challenging sometimes too for people, depending on what situation they're facing. But to me, there is no other option, because to go the other way doesn't bring great outcomes at all. It doesn't make your life better. It's only going to make your life worse.
No, and as you said, there are those really dark moments when, you lose someone you love, a grandparent or a parent or whatever it is. And so don't get me wrong, there are those moments which are deeply tough to navigate through. But in the main, glass half full, positive, ambitious attitude to everything.
Now, tell me something else that's sort of been touched on other platforms where I've or other sources of information where I've learned a bit about you, and that is about this fact that you didn't get a degree early on in your career. And again, I want to ask this of you, is whether or not that actually has helped propel you further. I mean, you've subsequently gone on and done an MBA, so you've ticked that box now. But earlier on, do you think there was an extra fuel to your fire, feeling like you needed to prove yourself because you didn't have a degree and maybe some other people that you're working with did?
Yeah, like I can run through it. I still don't have an MBA. I went to Harvard and did a business, a business course that TVNZ funded for me. But I still don't have a degree or an MBA, whereas my wife, she has an MBA, a master's in law from Harvard University, where she graduated first. So we're the kind of complete opposites academically in our family. And I think that demonstrates that there's no wrong or right path. So I definitely see the advantages of a university path where you have more time to find yourself and work out and investigate a bunch of options. You learn kind of rigor in terms of your ability to write, to research, to articulate, to argue, to present, to learn, the relationship side of things that comes from going to university as well, going overseas and, putting yourself against the best of the best of the best and giving yourself some confidence in that regard. Yeah. That's great. And I think it's most likely that our three children will choose that path. And as I said before, my path was kind of chosen for me in a way, because what I wanted to do, which was to become a teacher, got cut off. And so that put me into a situation where I wasn't too sure what I was going to do. Was I going to try and go and have another university path? And then Murray presented that role on the way back on a bus from the West Coast, where he said, "Why don't you come and work and try banking?" And that set me off on a different path, where while others were studying for 4 years, I was working for 4 years, and that skill set, real world life experiences, like you're practically learning about sales and marketing and customer service and commercial, not from a theoretical perspective, but a practical perspective. So, I had a 4-year advantage on life skills, on work skills, but I had a 4-year disadvantage on the academic path. It did probably drive me a little bit, because I wanted to prove myself in every role that I was smart enough to have it, if that makes sense. I did have a bit of a feel that maybe I wasn't smart enough to get into university. If I had have gone to university, I wouldn't have passed. And so I had a slight chip on my shoulder on that one, not obviously. And it was interesting. I came through the ranks quite quickly at the bank, and then I moved into a sales role with radio, and then I got promoted really quickly there as well. So I ended up, for whatever reason, progressing really quickly in my first 2 roles. And then I got to a point where people just assumed I had a degree. I didn't put it on my CV or mislead anyone, but it never came up in the interview process, because no one really asked me about your qualifications. They wanted to ask you about your work experience and what you had been working on and doing. Because I had, 8 years of work experience, and that was the primary conversation. And then as I got to quite senior levels within the organization, you see these jobs come up, and the job advertisement would say must have a tertiary qualification as a kind of stock standard template. And that's when I started freaking out, going, oh, when it gets really serious and I want to get onto an executive, or if I want to get a CEO role, is that going to be an impediment for me?
Yeah.
And so I did start to think about whether I needed to do some extra study outside of work to get an MBA. And I had a conversation with my boss at TVNZ at the time, Brett Kilwer, also assumed that I had a degree. And then he said to me, he would have thought I'd had one, but he said, to get the kind of chip off your shoulder, why don't you go to Harvard? So I went to Harvard Business School and did a business course to get a Harvard kind of business course qualification.
Yeah.
And I was there for a few months, and I was really apprehensive about going there. And then after the first 2 days, it just proved to me that I could foot it with anyone around the world, no matter how qualified they were. And so just kind of took a monkey off my back, if that makes sense, that
Absolutely.
I was at Harvard there for a long period of time. And these people from all over the world and all different industries, and I could contribute and go toe to toe with some of the brightest and best from around the world. So just gave me some comfort that my life and my work experience had maybe offset the degree that I didn't have.
Yeah, and I think that often that's underestimated, the importance of that real life experience. And I know that often employers, and I'm probably guilty of it too, you come out of university and you think that degree means you know everything. And the reality is, I think it's good to get you the first job maybe, but you haven't been out in the real world. You haven't been in practical situations and having to, deal with, finding solutions, etc. So I do feel that times that having a degree can give people a false sense of knowledge, thinking they know more than what they do. You can't beat real life experience.
Yeah,
So
and it depends on what what your role is. So if someone was operating on me, I'd definitely want them to have a medical degree of some description. So
yeah.
whereas if you're a sales and marketing, that probably doesn't matter so much whether it's not
No.
life and death, or if you're building a bridge and there's going to be 100,000 people driving right over it every day, you want to make sure you've got a pretty good engineer who understands how those types of structures need to be put together. But I think generically you're right, and I think it's changing probably faster now. This, like, even maybe 10 years ago, a skill that you had or that you'd learned would have a lifespan of maybe 7 to 8 years. Now I think it's more like 2 to 3, because things are changing so quickly. Technology is adapting so quickly. The explosion of AI, the best skill that you can have is curiosity, adaptability, and be change able. So, of course, I'm more open-minded when we're recruiting than others because I didn't go to university myself.
Yeah.
But I will hire first and foremost for potential than I will for your skill set that you've got, because we can teach you a skill. It's much more difficult to ingrain those human values of strong work ethic, working with people, values of good manners, sacrifice, teamwork, giving it your best. Those are the things that those soft skills that increasingly differentiate you from the competition. CVs often from a skills-based perspective look the same now. The difference often is your soft skills, and can you demonstrate those, really important human values. They're the ones that are that end up being the differentiator.
Yeah, I'm glad you just said all this. I'd love for children at school to listen to what you've just said, because I couldn't agree more. And I'm obviously not nearly as qualified as you to speak on the matter. But when I'm talking to my sons, my view to them is the degree doesn't really matter if you go to university. It's all about that you need to be someone that has a thirst to learn, that's very adaptable, and will be willing to evolve over time. And if you're a hard worker, so if you have all those qualities, that's going to be more important than what your degree is. Your degree becomes quite irrelevant, in my opinion, over time. It's just having those qualities that you're going to be able to evolve with time. So it's interesting to hear from you, because you've obviously employ a lot of people to hear that from you.
Yeah, like as I said before, I think degree can give you a lot of structure and foundational methods around learning, and like some of the frameworks that I learned in my time at Harvard, I use today. So those methodologies have been really valuable for me. But at the same time, you still can't beat having years of in the workforce and seeing it firsthand as well. But regardless of your experience, whether it was the university path or the working path, whatever skills you've got, although valuable, they don't offset the skills of being open-minded, being curious, a growth mindset, forever learning, good manners, looking people in the eye, holding a conversation, shaking their hand, giving up your seat, letting people through the doors, genuinely asking how they are, showing that you can work with a team collaboratively. Those are the things that make you stand out, and you can't act that. You can see it, when you're talking and when you're interviewing someone. So that's the stuff that excites me, and that's the stuff that I talk to my children about. It's the curiosity and the creativity that'll be differentiated. That curiosity and creativity is often very difficult for even a tool like artificial intelligence, which I don't think we've only just scratched the surface on what what that on the potential of AI is, will be very hard to replace those soft skills.
So one of my questions I was going to ask was really, what do you think were the key reasons why you've managed to progress so quickly through your career? But I think you've really already answered it by describing what your expectations are and qualities of people going forward. Because listening to that, it seems pretty much you describing yourself.
Yeah, I hope so. Like, I try and be a good human being first and foremost. You go back again, and I know there's this kind of themes of the conversations you've had with others in the past, that perceived adversity in your early life actually creates huge advantages. So the fact that I had to get responsibility at an early age with having a solo mum meant that I came through the ranks because I was really comfortable with seniority at an early age.
Yeah.
Because I had a lot of change in my life early. Then I'm very comfortable with change. In fact, I love industries only with a lot of change, when others don't like that. They like, the stability. So everyone who's listening will have their own things that own adversities earlier in their life or their careers. The difference is how you view them, and I definitely view them as positives and attributes that can help you later in your career. That's for sure. The other thing I'd say, Paul, is I think I've only applied for 2 jobs in my entire life. They've always been through relationships,
right?
And so you just never the other thing I always think is you're always in a job interview. Every day, week, month, quarter, half, or year, every interaction that you have with someone is a job interview. So are you positive? Are you delivering what you said you would? Are you giving it your best? Are you honest, truthful, showing good integrity, good values and manners? And those things create the next opportunity for you. Is New Zealand's a small market. The world's actually relatively small. It often does come down to who you know, and especially if you're trying to get a role within your own industry or within your own company, you need to remind yourself that every day is an opportunity for you to progress.
I keep coming back to your mother, thinking about your mum. I can only assume, you may correct me here, but your values, being respectful to people, etc., presumably has come from your mum too. And I just feel like it could be so different. Like, if you had a different mother that was maybe, shall we say, more negative, you could have become very insular, chip on your shoulder, feeling like you've been hard done by. But your foundation of positivity, to me, has just been pivotal in your life and your development. I mean, being the only child, you could very easily have found it difficult to communicate with people in that, but clearly you've gone the other way and you actually thrive being around other people as opposed to wanting to be on your own. It's, to me, it's all started back there with your mum, and she's just done an amazing job.
Yeah, and my grandparents, so my mum's parents as well,
Right.
they held good manners in very high regard, both of them.
Yeah.
So my grandmother from a values perspective, my grandfather from a values and from a manners perspective. So very selfless, giving people. So again, it's the environment that you're in that you learn from, and so that definitely has shaped me. The other thing I'd mention, though, Paul, it doesn't we do a lot of work with foundations that try to support disadvantaged youth in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And every time I've talked to them about a young child that stays on track or goes off track, what is the difference? And they all tell me exactly the same thing. It's just one person in their life that believes in them and sees their potential. That is the difference. And I was lucky that I had, as I said before, I had my mum, I had my grandparents. I can name a few teachers through my schooling. I had sports coaches who, at all points in time, I could tell believed in me and encouraged me. So I was really lucky. But it doesn't have to be your mum or your dad or an uncle or a grandparent. It can be a teacher, can be a coach, can be a next door neighbor, can be a friend's parent. All that someone needs is one person that can see their potential as a young kid, and that's the biggest, from what I've been told and what I've experienced, factor in making sure that you can be the best that you can be. I think that's a pretty cool, right? That doesn't feel
Absolutely
unachievable at all, and it also is a reminder to us that when there is an opportunity for you to even make an impact on a young person's life for 5 minutes, pat them on the shoulder, tell them that you noticed their potential, you noticed that moment where they were brilliant, where they were trying their best, where they were a great teammate, where you were impressed. There's those little things, and they stick with those kids. They stick with those kids for a long time, and they have a big impact. So that's a pretty cool reminder of doesn't matter what role that you play, whether in any organization or in society, you can have a positive impact on someone.
Yeah, that's a great message to try and get out to people, isn't it? That we can all do our little bit to help others and make a genuine difference long term.
I agree. It's cool. It's a privilege.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, how would you describe yourself? Like, how would you describe your personality?
Friendly, open, positive, upbeat. It's like genuinely I'm the same regardless of any situation. And the opposite of that is annoyingly positive. Upbeat to the point of being a bit naive, that you can't be as positive about everything as you think you are. You'd like to be. You have to identify the risks and acknowledge that there are downsides. And so there's always a counter to how you are. But that's I love people. I get my energy off people. So that's probably how I'm quite competitive, but as I said before, from a team perspective, not from an individual perspective. Extremely ambitious for New Zealand, for the country. That'd be some of the things that hopefully people would say I'm well-mannered and courteous.
And how do you cope, though, when you're under pressure, like, in a difficult situation, though? Do you manage to hold it together, and do you have particular strategies to try and deal with stress?
Yeah, it's a great question, and something that I'm working on all the time. I got a coach, a kind of a business coach, who ends up as a personal coach at the same time about 4 years ago now. And I did that because someone set up a cup of tea with me and said, Jason, you're being too nice and it's holding the organization back. Which I was like, what do you mean? That's a weird comment. So how can being too nice be a bad thing?
Yeah.
And he said to me, you need to talk to this person because they're a coach that I've used and I think they'd be really helpful. And Rolf, who I've never met, he's actually in Colorado. I've only talked to him over VC, and he's one of my best mates now. One of the first things that we talked about was that fact of being kind of too nice, and how that came about is I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So I would never say something to someone that I thought that they would perceive as negative or criticism. It's the negative of being positive.
Yeah.
And what Rolf is, what I learned, what I know now is it kind to have observed something about someone that you think if they could address could make them an even better version of themselves?
Yeah.
Or is it kind to just let them go about life without having shared that with them?
Yeah.
So that was one insight. Second insight about me is when it gets tough, I gravitate towards sorting it myself and not relying on anyone else. I feel like I'm the guy who's got to fix it.
Right.
And so when I get in tough situations, when I'm at my worst, I've locked myself away in a room for me to whiteboard, for me to solve it, for me to research, for me to find the solution. Yeah. When actually the best way to solve a problem is to ask other people for help when you're not sure of the way forward. And I've struggled with that the whole time. I've always gone, okay, when it gets real, it's up to me and no one else. So I'm getting much better at asking for support and help and talking more openly than I ever have. So those are just two examples of how I cope, or how I know when I'm under pressure. Is that I avoid having hard conversations because of that need to be liked and want to be nice. Yeah. And I remove myself and isolate myself because I feel like actually it's all up to me, when actually the best path forward is to be open and ask for help. And then the third thing that I don't do, that I'm still learning, is for you to be able to help others, you need to be a little bit selfish about what you need to do for yourself to make yourself in a strong position to help others. And for me, that could be going to the gym or, whatever it is, and just feeling healthy. But I always feel like I've got to sacrifice myself for work or for my family or for my friends or for something else. And I'm still working on that one. For me to be the best dad or the best husband or the best friend or the best leader or the best teammate, first and foremost, I've got to be the best version of myself. And that means I've got to, prioritize myself a little bit. But it's hard to do that without feeling a certain amount of guilt.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of intertwines with what I was going to ask, and that is about how you achieve balance in life and maintain your well-being.
So
how good are you at it?
Well, not that great, but it's a work on. I reframe a little bit in that there's no such thing as work-life balance, only work-life choices.
Right.
And like I could genuinely bring a sleeping bag to work and never leave. Like I'm never going to be able to get through the opportunities that are available to us and the demands on my time and on the organization. But first and foremost, I know I am not going to be good at work if I'm not good at home first, and my family is the most important thing in my life. And I will be terrible at work if I feel like I have sacrificed my family. So I choose to never miss a moment in my children and my wife's life that is important to them. So I am proud that right throughout my entire career, I have never missed an important moment. So whether it's been a prize giving or coaching their sports team or whatever it ends up being, I have always prioritized that over anything else. Doesn't mean I've been to everything. Like you can't go to every cross country. You can't go to, but the things that really matter to my kids, they would tell you that things that really matter to my wife, they would tell you that I've always been there 100% of the time. And then that might mean that I work at 10 o'clock at night or on a Sunday afternoon or whatever it is, but I've made a choice to do that too. And I'm not feeling guilty about it. And I'm not feeling guilty when I'm with my with my kids. So I think balance is impossible, but I think choices without guilt are possible, and that's what I try and do. And everyone's priorities are different. So some people that won't be what I've chosen to prioritize, it'll be something else in their life, and that's fine too. But you can't be good at work if you're not good at home first, and what good at home means is different for each person.
Yeah, yeah. And to what extent do you think being brought up by a solo mum, so not having a dad, has impacted on how you have become as a parent?
Yeah, a fair bit. Like I've, again, Rach, my wife, would say that I never feel like I'm a good enough father. But of course, she's going to tell me I'm a wonderful father, and she's a wonderful, wonderful mother. Because I think I'm super aware of not having a father in my life, and although I don't feel like I missed anything material. It was those little moments, and this is probably a little bit sexist, but because clearly it's not just guys that back trailers or fish, but those typical moments that historically people have assumed, 20 years ago, that your father would teach you how to do this or do that. I had to YouTube it or teach myself. I didn't have, like, mum taught me a lot, don't get me wrong, and a lot of people taught me a lot, but I didn't have the fatherly support in my life for those moments that maybe are traditionally father, roles.
Yeah.
So I've noticed those as a void when we've had kids a little bit, and that just meant that I've wanted to fill that void more. So it's definitely made me feel an obligation to be the best father I can possibly be, and I'll never be able to live up to the expectations I've set myself, which I think there can be some downsides to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for you, what motivates you on a day-to-day basis?
My family, first and foremost. I want them to be proud of me. I want to ensure that this country is a place that my children are excited about living and working, and that their children are excited about living and working in as well. So, multi-generational benefits. I'm in a privileged position to be working in an industry for a company that can contribute and help in that regard. So I think my great love for my family and my great love for this country, those are the two things that drive me. And then I think a little bit of imposter syndrome. I genuinely go every week, how the hell did I get here? When am I going to get found out? When is someone going to tap me on the shoulder and go, how the hell did you get here, you idiot? And I would go, I know. I can't believe it either. So that kind of that little bit of an imposter syndrome drives me a bit as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, is having that, does that would that not drive you, because you're feeling like you don't ever quite feel like you've totally earned the role or earned the position, so you can continue to push yourself to try and get yourself to the point where you feel like, well, yeah, I deserve to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm surrounded, whether it's at home, as I said, by my wonderful kids or my superhuman wife, and then my board and owners are absolutely incredible. And then you just see all these amazing stories from incredible New Zealanders doing amazing things every single day. And the people I work with here, who are just the best of the best of the best. I'm surrounded by, geniuses, and I'm definitely not one. So you can't help but have a certain amount of an inferiority, imposter syndrome when you're surrounded by people like that. But again, you use that to drive you, right? You use that to be the best version of yourself you can be in that environment.
So tell me, what does it take to be a great leader? What's the keys to being a great leader?
Caring deeply about your purpose. So whether it's, the people that you work with, the industry you're in, or the contribution that you can make to society. I think it's much more about the heart than it is the head in that regard. So you can't bullshit your heart, right? I remember actually, this is something that stuck with me years ago. Steve Henson, one of the greatest All Black coaches, he said the mirror never lies. So you can say whatever you want, but when you look at yourself in the mirror, you know the truth.
Yeah.
So if you really mean it, if you really feel it, you care about it. So I think that deep feeling of purpose and love and passion, so that would be one. That's probably the more emotional side. The more rational side from a great leader is setting a vision that is so inspirational that it motivates others to do and achieve more than they ever thought possible.
Yeah.
So those would be the two things. This ambitious vision that is extraordinarily exciting and energizing, that inspires others, and then deeply caring about them and the outcomes that you can generate emotionally to ensure that you kind of get there. Those would be the two things for me on leadership attributes.
And how do you translate that down to, like, if you have thousands of employees, how does that translate down to, some of the new employees down, in the entry levels within One New Zealand? I mean, how does that translate down to them so they feel part of that and will rise to the occasion and help make the company that much better?
So I meet every single new employee in the organization every Monday. So today,
really?
So today I met our new recruits and spent an hour with them, talked to them about my journey, my why I'm here. Talk to them about some of the things that we've discussed. I give them 3 messages. Diversity of thinking is a massive advantage. Don't be indoctrinated. So celebrate who you are as an individual. Be the same person at work as you are at home. Point 2, I talk to them about you can't be good at work if you're not good at home first. And then point 3, I talk to them about empowerment. I say to them, you're going to start work tomorrow, and the first thing that you're going to see is that something doesn't make sense to you, and that's because it doesn't make sense. We did something, put a process in place or a guideline in place that was right 3 months ago or 3 years ago that is stopping you from doing what you need to do for our customer. So no one is better than you in that moment to help a customer. So feel empowered to do whatever you need to do to get it right. And remind yourself that you're in an industry of technology that makes an amazing difference in that person's life. So I capture people on their very first day, apart from, clearly when I'm on holiday. And I just repeat the story over and over and over again. And you try and keep your messages to 3, in my view. You keep them as simple as possible. You tell them in stories, because people will remember stories more than anything. They'll remember the story or the intent of the story, and then they'll replay it in their own language, which is fine. And then just when you think you've said it enough, say it another 3 times. You'll get bored of the story before anyone else does. So the consistency of messaging is important. So I've had the same message for 6 years now, and I'll probably have the same message while I'm here and into my next organisation that I work in as well. So that's how I ensure, and I try and help ensure that everyone right throughout an organisation of 3,000 One New Zealand employees and probably another 5,000 partner employees, that they understand where we're heading and what their role is in helping us to get there.
Wow. Well, that's a remarkable thing to do. I don't know there'll be too many CEOs that do that.
It's an investment. It's a bit like, but it's a fantastic investment. It's a bit like, I make a big investment in being accessible on social media. I give my email address out to everyone. I tell everyone in our entire customer base that they need to think of me as their personal account manager. I read every single email personally that comes through to me, because it's the best way for me to understand what's happening in the business, what's happening in the market, and what's important to our people and what's important to our customers. So, I know that, I've had thousands of conversations with our employees throughout the year because I've met with them every week. I know I've had tens of thousands of conversations with our customers because I've either met with them or I've read their emails and responded to them. And there's no better fact base than that to help you make decisions and make priority calls within an organization. So it is a big investment, but it's a calculated investment because I know it works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it just gives you a chance to really get a sense of what's going on in the business and in the market by having the communication like that.
It does.
So tell me, what would your advice be to people that have goals in life, young people in life? What would be your advice to them about what the keys are for them in achieving their goals in life?
Well, the first one is surround yourself, even with just one person that believes in you. So, back to our earlier conversation, there are energy givers and energy takers. Surround yourself with energy givers that believe in your potential. Nothing beats that, even if it's just one person. And even if it's multiple people who believe in you or give you a message in 5 minutes, hold on to it. That's point one. Secondly, adversity is an opportunity. So I know it's tough, and you can feel lost and depressed and in those difficult times, but just know from someone who's got grey hair like me that you have a choice to determine that adversity is an opportunity, and every single time I promise you that it is. And then the third thing is that life is a job interview, and so be the best that you can absolutely be in every situation. The outcome might not always get there, but that doesn't matter. It's the effort that matters. And I know that if you are the best version of yourself every day, the rewards will come.
And to be the best version of yourself every day, would you agree that it requires you to have an honest conversation with yourself every day, or on a regular basis, and be prepared to acknowledge when maybe you do make mistakes and looking at how you can do better?
Absolutely. Again, back to the points, someone who believes in you will be honest enough to see your potential in some areas and then ask you to apply that same potential in areas where you need to improve, or in situations where you haven't lived up to those standards. And, as we said before, no one knows their standards better than yourself. When you look in the mirror, have you lived up to those expectations? So that level of honesty, point one. No one's perfect. As I said before, when I'm, being too nice it's not an attribute. Actually, it can be a disadvantage. Isolating yourself when you're under pressure, refusing to ask for help, even though that that it might be the best way forward. All of those things about yourself, you have to acknowledge and work through. So like we all have bad days. We all make missteps. There are things that we're not proud of, but ultimately you have to remind yourself that even though we make mistakes, you're a good human being. You've got the best of intentions, and that should be enough to get you through, hopefully.
Yeah. And it is a cliche, but when you make mistakes, in my experience at least, that's when I've learnt the most. The hard as it is to go through it, you can, if you're open to it, learn so much from that experience.
No, I completely agree. It's, funnily enough, even in our industry, the most cyber secure a business will be is after they've had a cybersecurity attack, right? They understand that there's weaknesses in their artillery that they've then fixed. So to your point, right, when you make mistakes or when you uncover and acknowledge your shortcomings or areas of improvement, that's probably when you are at your best, because you've acknowledged them and you're addressing them. It's when you're in a false sense of security or cruising that you're really in trouble.
And do you think it's something that a lot of people struggle with insofar as acknowledging or being willing to acknowledge honestly when they make mistakes and things that they need to improve on? And do you see that much in the culture of your business? How good are people at having honest conversations with themselves?
Yeah, I think my first thought, Paul, is that that's 100% true, but the opposite is also true. Let me explain. So we're a nation that doesn't like to show weakness. So, and that's kind of again ingrained in our DNA, that you don't show weakness. You gloss over it. How are things? Bloody good, mate. But then the other side of the coin is New Zealanders, we don't celebrate success. We have tall poppy syndrome too much too, right? So if you pop your head up and you go, look what I've achieved, everyone goes, oh, what a dick, what a skite, what a show off. So we are this weird, on this weird spectrum of not wanting to show and celebrate success and not wanting to show and demonstrate failure. We're in that middle ground where we don't show either. So I think there's always an opposite, and so we're not too hot and not too cold. We're kind of like the Goldilocks syndrome, right? Within New Zealand's kind of cultural DNA.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, and the good example for that is the whole sort of perception around bankruptcy. Now, I have a lot of guests that are from America, and it strikes me that their view on bankruptcy is very different to here. Over there, it tends to be generally seen that if you go bankrupt several times, they're looking at what you've learned from that, and that you've gained tremendous experience from that, which potentially will make you that much better going forward. Whereas here, the thought of going bankrupt is just an absolute stigma on you. And the perception would be one of, well, you're incompetent. You don't know what you're doing. You've gone bankrupt. So you wouldn't possibly deserve another chance. It's just such different perspectives. And I'm not proposing that we should just high five when someone goes bankrupt. I'm not suggesting that. But acknowledging that there's actually can be some real value in terms of what's learned through that process. But we're not willing to accept that in this country. Or at least not in my experience.
No, I agree. It goes back to your point before. Failure is your biggest learning opportunity. Yeah. But we don't acknowledge that. I mentioned before, kind of the cybersecurity breach. You're probably never at your most protected than when you're on high alert. After you've gone through bankruptcy, man, that's the exact person that you want to talk to about what they learned and what they know to avoid those pitfalls in the past. They're probably at their best when they've just gone through that kind of experience. I think the most important thing is, as long as that failure has been navigated through with integrity and values at all times, that's the only question mark for me, is that failure due to an unethical way of running business? Well, that's a different scenario altogether. But you're absolutely right. If I was in getting a startup or getting a board put together, one of the first people I'd want to do is someone who's failed in a startup. That's invaluable expertise that you can learn from. But for whatever reason, failure is not celebrated And also it's forgotten. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs around the world have not cracked it first time round. That's for sure. But we only seem to remember the high moments, not how hard it was to get there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you said before too, at the other end of the spectrum, we have difficulty in accepting and acknowledging people's successes. So it does make it a bit hard for people in their country, that you're really stuck in the middle. Yeah, so it's quite a unique scenario, really.
And it's like, I am on a mission to, I know it's kind of a bit grating, but just to remind people that I think we do live on the greatest country in the planet, and I want anyone around the world to know that. So we attract the best and the brightest to come and live here and work and raise a family and have every success. I want all those New Zealanders who have gone overseas to come back and contribute to the economy. We need to start talking a good game. It's not Australia that's a lucky country. It's Aotearoa New Zealand that's a lucky country. We've got the best people. Look at our sporting results.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, our ability to compete on a world stage because of talent, innovation, teamwork, psychology. We don't have the most resources, that's for sure. So there is something in this New Zealand DNA which makes us quite special internationally, and it needs to be celebrated, not hidden.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And I just hope that, we can get a lot of people to watch this interview, because I think you've just shared some really good messages, and particularly too, I think for people coming out of school, giving them inspiration as to what they can potentially achieve in their life. Doesn't matter what their goals are, but just that if they have goals, then if they really want them, they can go out there and achieve them. But it's all about perspective. It's all about how you perceive things as to what the outcome will ultimately be.
Yeah, well, hopefully it is a little reminder that there's no right or wrong path.
No.
It's just being the best version of yourself, whatever path that you choose. And if you are like that and you take every opportunity, then you'll make it. You'll make every moment a winner. And if someone like me, can get into this privileged position, genuinely anyone can. As I said before, I'm just waiting to be tapped on the shoulder and someone to say, "How the hell did you get here?" And I'll go, "I know. I can't believe it either."
Well, Jason, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your time today on Insights into Success. I know you've agreed you're going to stay on, and we're going to do a short discussion about books and our Read to Succeed segment. But for the moment, thank you so much. I know you're a very busy man. You run a big company, so I really appreciate you taking the time.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Paul. I learned a lot, as always.